In my own video entitled When Video Essayists Lie, Everything Wrong with Austin McConnell's When Card Games Break, I dismantled some of Austin McConnell's arguments and disproved what seemed to be the central thesis of his video, that Shudderwock broke Hearthstone. But although I didn't say this in that video, one thing I was keen to mention in my replies to commenters was that I believe Austin did make one very interesting point. It's just a shame that he left it right until the end of the video and barely elaborated on it.
In an online system that can literally change the text and value on every card you purchase at any time without your consent or even warning, what are you actually purchasing? In that sense, do you even own the card?
Here, Austin brings up an issue that is not only interesting, but also extremely pertinent to players of card games, both physical and digital, as well as video games in general, and that's the mutability and perishability of games. As he puts it, a video game stored on a cartridge bought in 1997 plays in exactly the same way now as it always has and always will, excepting issues relating to its physical degradation, of course. But in comparison, Hearthstone now plays very differently to Hearthstone in 2015. Not only are there more cards, but some cards don't even function in the same way anymore. And this is true of all online games these days, whether it be balance patches, buffs, nerfs, new characters, or existing character reworks. Every online game is subject to the whims of its developers, and the control is largely out of the hands of the players. Recently, Famous Jake's video, "Do You Own Your Hearthstone Cards?" popped up in my subscription feed, and being from a content creator who actually plays and is clearly passionate about Hearthstone, as well as also being a response to McConnell's video, it's naturally much more factually accurate. Overall, I found it an enjoyable watch, but because I'd already been thinking about making the video that I am now, I found that both his and Austin's video seemed to miss one crucial fact. Hearthstone, League of Legends, Overwatch, they're all multiplayer games, and I think that's a very important aspect of this discussion that people are overlooking, and perhaps they're overlooking it because it seems so obvious. So let's start with the obvious stuff. Multiplayer games are generally distributed and played over the internet, meaning that all players must communicate with centralized servers to receive some sort of information about the game, if not the entire game itself. Because this information comes from official servers which are regulated by the game's developers, players have no power over what information they receive, meaning they cannot control the state of the game and thus cannot change the game themselves if the developers alter it in a way that they do not like. This differs greatly from single-player games, which are almost always completely stored on the player's computer, meaning that if the developers do change anything about the game, players are able to roll back their game to a previous version if they wish. As a result, players of a single-player game are almost always able to revert changes they don't like, while players of a multiplayer game are almost never able to do that. Now that is obvious, you didn't really need me to tell you that, but it's also very important in this context because card games are an interesting sort of blurring of these lines. While digital card games behave in the same way as any other online game, physical cards more closely resemble single-player games, much like those bought on a cartridge in 1997, for example. It's impossible for the developers of Magic the Gathering, for example, to physically alter the text that's printed on your copy of Ancestral Recall, so in that sense it's impossible for a card to be buffed, nerfed, or otherwise changed. As a result, when cards are obviously so powerful that they fundamentally break the game and make it unfun, Wizards of the Coast, who design and decide the rules for Magic cards, have no choice but to make it against the rules to play the card, thereby banning it, or in some cases restricting them to one copy per deck. Now, when Austin McConnell talks about this phenomenon, he puts it thusly.
If you buy a physical card that gets nerfed for competitive organized play, or placed on some kind of restricted list, which is more often the case, you can still theoretically play games privately using that card as it was originally released, and in that way retain a little bit of the original purchase value.
And this is where I have to disagree. You see, while Magic cards do share that physical property with a 1997 GoldenEye cartridge, where they differ massively is in their actual use. While I spent the majority of 1997 in the womb, even I know that GoldenEye is a video game that you can pop into an N64 and have a good time shooting some baddies by yourself, whereas a Magic card is only truly useful in social situations. Whether you're playing the game, selling the card, trading, or something else, the card only has any value because people believe it does, a bit like another paper-based commodity. And just like that other paper-based commodity, the card is only valuable if the regulating body which controls it, in this case Wizards of the Coast, say it's useful. If they say your card can't be played, then it has no use and therefore no value. Okay, fine, but we can still use the card when we play with friends, right? In that sense, it still has a use, and therefore retains some of its value. Well, sort of. What if your friends aren't okay with you playing that card? What if they'd rather just play with the rules that Wizards of the Coast dictate, and therefore they also believe that your card is too powerful for the game? Well, hopefully you have friends that are more understanding than that and more fun than that, but my point here is that the value of the card is nothing more than that of a social contract, and at that point, why even bother with a card at all? This is Coup. Well, that's Will Wheaton, but this is Coup. Coup is a fun little game where each player assumes the role of 2 of these 5 characters, all of which have different abilities which interact with each other in different ways. But because nobody knows who is who, players are encouraged to lie about their own roles in order to succeed. It's a fun little game of strategy, deception, and risk. But what I really want to draw attention to here is the cards themselves that are used to play the game. The entire game of Coup is played with just 15 cards, 3 of each character, as well as these little tokens which represent the currency in the game. Now, when I was in 6th form, I used to play card games like Liar and Jungle Speed with my friends, and I really wanted to try Coup, but having very little money, I didn't want to pay the £20 or so because I was worried that others wouldn't enjoy the game as much as I knew I would. And that's when I stumbled upon a random Reddit comment about the game which described how it could be played using a regular deck of 52 playing cards. A king represents the duke because he gets all the taxes. A queen is the contessa, the head female whose guards prevent any assassination attempts. A jack is the ambassador, able to weasel himself out of danger. A 10 is the captain, because cap 10, and an ace the assassin, an ace killer, as well as them both just beginning with the letter A. Take 3 of each, shuffle them up, deal 2 to every player, and you can use whatever you like as the currency, including the 37 remaining cards as long as you keep them face up. And that's how I played Coup for the first time. It wasn't perfect, people forgot what the different cards did a lot of the time because there wasn't anything on the cards to remind them, but it was fun, and it's what convinced me to buy the game proper. In fact, I've done a similar thing for just about every card game I own. I used Google Images to look up Geek Out cards to play a couple of rounds with friends, and Cards Against Humanity has a download page so you can print out your own deck, and that's how I first played it when I was about 14. Similarly, it's not uncommon at all to see Magic players slipping a piece of paper with the name of a different card on it in front of their cards while they're testing or when they're playing with friends. This is called proxying because the stand-in card is a proxy for the intended card, and few people really care just so long as it's clear what the card is and what it does. If I say this Mantis Rider is a Snapcaster Mage and you're okay with that, then for all intents and purposes it is a Snapcaster Mage. So the value of your now banned cards is effectively the same as that of a scrap of paper with the same words scrolled onto it, and I think we can all agree that's essentially negligible. But maybe value is the wrong way to be looking at this anyway. The issue that most people have when a game changes is not that they've lost out on money, but that an exact experience they held very dear is now no longer available. In Magic the Gathering, the experience of a card can be fully replicated by a piece of scrap paper whether or not you own the card, and its status of being banned or unbanned has no bearing on that. In Hearthstone, the experience of a card is something you can never reclaim if the developers decide to change it. When an online game changes, there's nothing a player can do to bring the old version of that game back. Unlike a single player game, we can't just roll back the game to a previous version. Except, of course, when someone does.
Someone once said that you can't go home again. But they lacked vision. And a temporal discombobulator.
Private servers have been a way for MMO players to take back control of their game for years now, but they're perhaps paradoxically now more prominent than ever thanks to official vanilla versions of games such as World of Warcraft Classic and RuneScape 2007. Players flock to both these unofficial and official servers in search of an authentic nostalgia, a place to play their games as they fondly remember them, and it's not too far-fetched to imagine something similar happening with Hearthstone. Whether it's an unofficial fan project or a fully endorsed game mode, if there's enough of a market for classic Hearthstone, it's not crazy to think Blizzard could actually implement it. But although these servers are generally well received and enjoyed by fans, updates present a perpetual balancing act to them. Too many updates and the game will lose the nostalgic qualities that players are looking for, but too few and the game will become stale and players will run out of new content to interact with. Snapshots of one particular era of an ever-evolving game can't sustain a player base for very long, meaning they're ultimately not financially sustainable. So a classic Hearthstone server or game mode is not something I think we're very likely to see in the near future, if ever. And that's probably for the best. Card games need change. They need a constant and steady stream of new cards and mechanics to keep new strategies evolving and maintain a feeling of freshness. But what makes it very hard to find a satisfying conclusion to this video is that all of this seems pretty moot in context. Yes, the ideas of mutability and ownership and perishability in physical and digital card games are interesting issues which do warrant discussion, but the majority of the time, complaints surrounding card nerfs are that they do not come fast and frequent enough, that cards clearly too powerful for the game are given too long to run rampant, that more rather than less should be changed. And while players are often too quick to jump to conclusions about certain cards, Shutterwalk included, I think the fact that players raise their complaints rather than just quitting the game is testament to a certain amount of trust in Blizzard to fix the issues that players view as important. Hearthstone has a lot of competition right now, with Magic the Gathering Arena having just opened up its beta, Artifact around the corner, and so many other card games on the market in both the digital and physical realms. The fact that Hearthstone's playerbase is still going so strong must mean that they're doing something right. Well, that, or we've got a lot of cases of Stockholm Syndrome at play here. So while I think Austin McConnell's video lightly brushed up against an interesting point, and Famous Jakes explored that point in an interesting way, I think the fact of the matter is, at least right now, that when card games change, players are generally happy with those changes. Change, after all, is good. Hey everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for watching my video and for watching it all the way to the end. That's pretty impressive, well done. I enjoyed making it. It's something a little bit different from what I usually make, so I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it, as cliche as that sounds. Please let me know if you did like it. You can like the video, you can leave me a comment telling me so. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, especially if you'd like to see more videos about card games in general, I'd consider subscribing, because that's the kind of videos that I make. Let me know, especially in the comments, if you've got any criticisms, if you think you disagree with any of my points. I'd love to hear about that. Any suggestions for future videos, I am super open to all of that stuff. You might not be able to tell right now, but my voice is slightly destroyed. But I hope to see you again soon and be making new videos very soon, hopefully with a much quicker turnaround than this one. But it's been an absolute blast and I appreciate you watching it, so see you again soon. Have a lovely day.